History often remembers the grand victories, the famous generals, the decisive moments, the flags raised high after glory. But just beneath the pages of fame lie forgotten battles, where unknown soldiers bled and ordinary people changed the course of America's destiny. Their names are not carved in marble, yet their courage shaped a land that would one day call itself free. The Battle of Oriskany, 1777. It was August, hot and heavy with humidity, when the forests of upstate New York swallowed two armies into chaos. The revolution was raging, and British forces aimed to divide the colonies by seizing control of the Hudson River. General Nicholas Herkimer, leading a ragtag group of militiamen, marched to relieve Fort Stanwix. But deep in the ravines of Oriskany, they were ambushed by a combined force of Loyalists and Iroquois warriors. Thunder rolled, not from the sky, but from muskets. Smoke clung to the trees as men fought at arm's length. The ravine turned to mud and blood. Herkimer was struck in the leg, yet refused to retreat. Propped against a tree, he continued to direct his troops, reloading and firing calmly between orders. He did not survive the infection, but his courage broke the British offensive long enough for American reinforcements to arrive. Few outside of historians recall the name Oriskany. Yet, without it, the chain of events leading to Saratoga, the victory that drew France into the war, might never have happened. The Battle of New Orleans, 1815. Years later, another forgotten storm brewed, this time at the mouth of the Mississippi. The War of 1812 was technically over. The Treaty of Ghent had been signed in Europe, but word traveled slowly across the Atlantic. In the Louisiana swamps, neither side knew peace had been declared. General Andrew Jackson, a man of iron will and fierce pride, commanded a ragged force of volunteers, freedmen, pirates, and frontiersmen. Facing them was a well-trained British army, veterans of Napoleon's wars. At dawn on January 8, 1815, the British advanced across open ground, red uniforms blazing in the mist. Jackson's men waited behind earthworks of mud and cotton bales. When the firing began, it was a slaughter. Cannon fire tore through ranks, and musket balls whistled through fog. The British fell by the hundreds. The battle lasted less than 2 hours, but its echoes shaped a nation's identity. America had stood alone, unpolished and outnumbered, yet victorious. The irony was cruel. The war had already ended, but the victory at New Orleans gave a fledgling country pride, unity, and a new hero. Jackson's name would one day rise to the presidency. The forgotten battle became the unspoken birth of American confidence. The Battle of Palo Alto, 1846. By the mid-19th century, the American frontier stretched toward the horizon. The nation hungered for expansion, its eyes on the lands of Texas and beyond. The Mexican-American War began with a cannon's roar near the Rio Grande at a dusty plain called Palo Alto. General Zachary Taylor faced a Mexican army under General Mariano Arista. The Americans had better artillery, but they were deep in hostile territory, cut off and outnumbered. As the sun scorched the grass, the thunder of cannon fire echoed for hours. When the smoke cleared, Taylor's army stood victorious. It was a small battle by later standards, but it set a precedent. The victory emboldened America's drive westward. It also opened wounds that would fester. Debates over slavery in newly claimed territories would divide the country just 15 years later. Palo Alto was not a triumph of conquest. It was a spark that lit the fire of destiny, both glorious and tragic. The Battle of Glorieta Pass, 1862. During the Civil War, the eyes of the nation were fixed on Gettysburg, Antietam, and Shiloh. Yet far to the west, in the rugged mountains of New Mexico, a small clash decided the fate of an empire's ambition. Confederate forces, led by General Henry Sibley, dreamed of seizing the Southwest. Control of the region's mines and trade routes could finance their rebellion and open a path to the Pacific. But Union volunteers, miners, ranchers, and frontiersmen stood in their way. In March 1862, the two forces met in Glorieta Pass, a narrow mountain corridor near Santa Fe. The fighting was fierce but brief. What decided the day was not the guns, but the will of a handful of men who discovered and destroyed the Confederate supply train hidden miles away. With their supplies gone, Sibley's army retreated to the desert, broken and starving. The West would remain in Union hands. Though small in numbers, Glorieta Pass was the Gettysburg of the West. Its forgotten heroes preserved the dream of one United States. The Battle of Manila Bay, 1898. By the end of the 19th century, America had grown restless again. The age of empires was not over, and the Spanish flag still fluttered over the Philippines, Cuba, and Puerto Rico. When the battleship Maine exploded in Havana Harbor, the nation demanded retribution. War with Spain followed, and with it, the birth of America as a global power. At dawn on May 1st, 1898, Commodore George Dewey led the U.S. Asiatic Squadron into Manila Bay. His ships, painted gray and silent, glided across the water. The Spanish fleet waited, outdated and outgunned. When Dewey uttered his famous command, "You may fire when ready, Gridley," the world changed. In just 7 hours, the entire Spanish fleet was destroyed. Not a single American ship was lost. The victory stunned Europe and announced the arrival of a new force on the world stage. Yet few remember it now, the moment America stepped from isolation into empire. For better or worse, Manila Bay marked the beginning of modern American power. The quiet legacy. The forgotten battles of America tell a story larger than war. They speak of ordinary men and women, farmers, slaves, immigrants, and frontiersmen, who carry the burden of a nation not yet certain of itself. They remind us that history's turning points are not always the grandest scenes, but the quiet struggles where courage met chaos. Each battle, from Oriskany's forest to Manila's Bay, reflects a truth that echoes through time. Nations are shaped not by glory, but by endurance. The people who fought and died in obscurity believed in something greater than themselves, even when the world would forget their names. Their sacrifices stitched the fragile fabric of America's story, a patchwork of courage, loss, and hope. Every inch of soil where they fell became a silent testament to the price of freedom. So when we speak of liberty and greatness, we must also speak of Oriskany, Glorieta, and Palo Alto. We must remember the swamps of New Orleans and the dawn over Manila Bay, because in the end, it was not only the famous battles that built America, but the forgotten ones, where ordinary